Well, hey everybody. Part 2 of the building the Mini-Nuc is going to be exclusively for building the frames. It's not hard, but it's challenging for sure. And the Mini-Nuc plans do come with dimensions for the mini frames, but they also reference the plans for the full-length frames. I made Tillman's frames quite a bit, and so I kept this one, and I'm going to pull some of the measurements off of this one, some of them off of this one, depending on what it wants, because some of it's unique and some of it's universal. So what I'm going to do to get started is I've already started doing it. I'm just ripping the blanks, and we'll get ready to make the cuts. One thing that it does say in the full-size frames is make a bunch. I think I've said on a few beekeeping videos before, when you're making beekeeping stuff, a lot of times the work is in setting the saw up and getting the cuts right. Once you have it set, just run it till you run out of wood. So that's what we'll do. So here, for example, we've got a stack that are going to turn into the top bars. And anyway, so we'll get started cutting pieces down to size and getting ready to go. Well, here's all the pieces of wood that we need to make the frames. They're all cut out, and I'm not going to go over how to make the end bars. I think I do have a video on how to at least get this taper. But as far as the bars go, you start out with 2x stock. It doesn't matter, 2x4, 6, 8, whatever you got. And you mill the dado, and you mill the other dado, and then you slice it to thickness, and then you cut the shoulders off, and then you drill the holes. Anyway, it's kind of an involved process. It's fun. So here I've got, just coming to the end of my box of them, a big box of frame ends. And here we have all the top bars, and here we have the bottom bars. And we're going to see if we can. We've done it before where we've cut the tack strip for the wax out of the top bar itself. If we can't, we've got enough scrap pieces and little things that we can use to cut out the tack strips. But other than that, we're going to start milling. And I believe what we're going to do is we're going to put the dado on and start running the dados. This is the top bar, so there's got to be a dado that fits the end bar. So there's a couple of different cuts we need to make on each side and then on the bottom as well. We also want to cut some kind of taper there. And so anyway, then we got to cut the tack strip off if we can. Sometimes we can. So we have the dados cut on the both ends and on the bottom. And now what we need to do is taper this down. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use our tenon jig, and we have it set to 5 degrees, so it's 85 because it's 5 degrees off 90. And we're going to raise the blade just high enough so that as we push it through, it'll I got my hands full. I wasn't thinking this through. It'll nip that off, so it'll look like that, where my finger wasn't covering. So we'll get that set and run them through. Another point before I move on to that step is, you see we have more than 20 frames worth of material here, and the reason why is it's not uncommon that you have to cull, C-U-L-L, cull a few pieces throughout the process. If you have some extreme blowout or something's not right, you just pitch that one, turns into firewood, but you still have enough. Our goal is to finish with at least 20. If we have extra, that's wonderful, but we don't want 19. So we start off, I think, enough to make 24, 25 or so. And I haven't had to call any yet, but in the past I have, so I'm not out of the woods yet. And so just some advice. If you're making these, make some extra. You won't regret it. Okay, so there's our profile for the tapered edge. 7/16 here and 1/2 inch on here. So it's a very small taper, and if you can't make it on the table saw, you can do it on the bandsaw. You can do it in by hand, for crying out loud. So don't stress. And if you can't make it tapered, don't worry, just make it flat. So what we did here is we reset the blade to 0 degrees, or 90 in our case, 90 degrees. The last mill cut we need to make on the top bar is, it's tough to distinguish, but there's a 1/2 inch and a little bit less than a 1/2 inch over here. The plans make it be quarter inch wide, but they're assuming a full kerf blade. So what we've got here is the same blade we used to cut the tabs. We're going to set it just under the height of that piece there so we don't cut beyond the groove. And then as far as the fence goes, we're going to set it so that we just cut this off. So you leave the 1/2 inch section, you cut off your small section, and if you have it right, you reuse this as your tack strip. I believe the Michigan plans have you making a separate tack strip by cutting this off, but they also don't assume that you're using a plywood small thin curve blade. So we've got the height set, and we just, to set the measurement, you just take and you go just like that. And so you run your test through, and hopefully what you end up with is a bunch of tack strips. And if you don't, then oh well, you didn't have one before. No loss if you don't have one now. So anyway, we'll make those. That's the last milling on the top bar. The bottom bars just need one more mill cut, which is a cut down the center. Cut down the center, and it cuts almost, it's a 3/8 inch board, and you cut like 5/16. So that's what you'll look like after you make your cut. And to do that, you use this thin blade again, set it to be halfway down and almost all the way through. So what I found to be the simplest way to do this is to assemble the frames first, and then in a separate step put the wax and the wedge bars on, because primarily a couple reasons for that. First off, I use different length of staples to assemble the frame versus putting the wedge bar on. So the main frame gets inch or 7/8 staples, whatever you got will be fine. The wedge bar only gets 1/2 inches, and I don't want to have to keep switching the tool over, and I've only got one brad nailer. So what we do, take your top bar and just put a little dab of glue, little dab will do ya, and you put that right where the dado lands onto the sidebars. And then my habit is to turn it over, push down, make sure you're good and down, and then there still had a brad in it. Now we should be on the staples. Thought they were clear. Put a brad or a staple down through the top bar, and then to the piece that's still 3/4 inch thick, you put one brad or staple into that 3 inch section or 3/4 inch section. Between that and the glue, you should have no problems with that frame holding. Next one we'll do is just a little dab of glue here on the bottom part, and that's where your bottom bar will go. And so what you do there is you just fit it into that bottom dado, and I like to make sure it's flush. And again with the brad, Alright, last step, you don't have to do this, but if you got the square handy, just make sure you're pretty close to square. It should be a self-squaring frame if you made your cuts right, basically it's okay to be a little bit off, but you want to be pretty close. So then what I'll do is I'll just set these to the side. I'll keep on trucking, finish all the frames, and then once I have all the frames built, then we'll come back and we will do the wax in the wedge bar. As I went to install this first sheet, something I remembered from the last time I did this, when I built my first go around, was the frame is solid on the bottom, which is fine, except for in our case, the wax is just a little tall. A couple things you could do there. You could cut the wax. In this case, since it's wired, it wouldn't be as easy. So what I remember doing last time is I still have the plywood blade in the table saw. And so we're just going to have it just up high enough that it wants to be able to bite through that little gap. And we're going to make split frames. So we'll take and mark with a pencil the beginning and end of our cut on our saw blade on the zero clearance insert. And then what we'll do is we'll set the fence, of course, make it correct. And remember, we have staples in the end of it, so we don't want to go too crazy. We'll come down onto the blade, run it through, and then before we get to the end bar, before the end bar hits that line, we pick it back up, and then we'll be able to put that foundation in, no sweat. There, the wax is laying in, and because this is a small frame, and it's also because it's wired wax, I don't worry a lot about side to side, but the last part of it is to put the tack strip in, and let's see which tack strip wants to fit today. Sometimes they don't fit, you just trim them down real quick, but you put that wedge bar in, and then pinch it as tight as you can. Try to do this so you can see, and then get it tight. Pinch it tight. There you have an assembled frame. It's ready to be placed into the beehive and get drawn out. One thing I didn't mention or show you, because I had a whole mess of them built up. These are the clips that you make. There's plans for these in the Mini-Nuc plans, but these are the clips. If you've seen any of the other videos I made up about how I'm using these things, these are the ones that straddle the frames, and you put one mini frame on each half of this clip, and the other half of the mini frame goes on the half of the, and this is a double if you want to put 4 of them. Anyway, that was the long and the short of how to build frames. Specifically, we built mini frames. However, very same principles would apply to building a full-length frame. So, not saying I'm a real big advocate for making your own real frames. If you have a good option to get them commercially, it's pretty inexpensive way to go if you want to do it that way. However, if you want to make your own, it is a fun project and you can do it. Just table saw. Dado blade's kind of a requirement on that one. You have a lot of wide cuts you need to make, but other than that, thanks for watching, and I hope that you found this video useful.